Are you feeling overwhelmed by anxiety, with your mind racing and your heart heavy? Today, everything changes. This powerful prayer will guide you into the deepest peace you've ever experienced, a divine calm that no circumstance can shake. As you listen, imagine God's presence wrapping around you like a warm blanket, dissolving every worry and replacing confusion with crystal clarity. Feel the weight lifting off your shoulders, your breathing becoming deeper, and a supernatural peace flooding every corner of your being. This isn't just another prayer, it's your personal pathway to the peace that transcends all understanding. I've seen this prayer transform lives, breaking chains of anxiety, restoring sleep to the restless, and bringing breakthrough to those who felt stuck in turmoil. The words you're about to hear aren't just words. They're spiritual keys unlocking God's perfect peace in your situation right now. Your mind will be renewed, your spirit calmed, and your perspective completely transformed. If you're desperate for God's peace to fill your heart today, type "Peace Comes Now" in the comments and subscribe right away. This could be the very moment God has ordained for your complete deliverance from anxiety and fear. Lord, as I come before you today, I feel the weight of my restless mind. Thoughts race through my consciousness like leaves caught in a storm, spinning and turning without direction or purpose. My heart feels heavy with worries about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday, and the countless uncertainties that fill my present moments. This inner chaos has become so familiar that I sometimes forget what true peace feels like. I recognize now how this constant state of agitation has distanced me from your presence. Father, I acknowledge how easily I get trapped in cycles of anxiety and fear. These emotions grip me tightly, making it difficult to breathe, to think clearly, to see beyond the immediate troubles that surround me. The noise in my mind drowns out your gentle voice, and I find myself struggling to hear your whispers of comfort. My spirit yearns for stillness, yet I continue to feed the very turbulence I wish to escape. I confess that I've been trying to manage these storms on my own strength, forgetting that you are the true master of the sea. God of all comfort, I bring before you every racing thought, every knot of tension in my body, every fear that steals my sleep at night. I name these disturbances before you: the uncertainty about my future, the strain in my relationships, the pressure of expectations I place upon myself, and the constant noise of a world that never seems to slow down. These are the barriers that stand between me and the peace you promise. I've carried them for so long that they've become part of me, yet I know this is not the life you intend for me to live. Your word reminds us in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 to 7, not to be anxious about anything, but to present every request to you. Yet I confess how difficult this is in practice. The gap between knowing and living feels vast and impossible to cross. Today, I choose to be honest about this struggle, to acknowledge the storms within me before I can experience the calm. I believe that naming these struggles before you is the first step toward transformation. Help me to see my inner turmoil not as my permanent state, but as a temporary condition that your peace can overcome. Heavenly Father, in this moment, I hear your gentle invitation to slow down. Like a parent calling to a running child, you beckon me to pause, to breathe, to remember that not everything requires my immediate attention. The world spins madly on, demanding more of my energy, my focus, my very being with each passing hour. Yet, in the midst of this whirlwind, I hear your voice, soft but clear, asking me to step away from the rushing current. Help me to recognize that this invitation is not an interruption to my important work, but the most essential work itself. Lord, I confess that I've made busyness a badge of honor. I've confused motion with purpose and activity with achievement. The stillness that my soul craves has become something I both desire and resist. Teach me to see that slowing down is not laziness, but wisdom. The wisdom to honor the limits of my humanity and the sacred rhythm you established at creation. As it says in Psalm chapter 46, verse 10, you call us to be still and know that you are God. This stillness is not empty space to be filled, but fertile ground where awareness of your presence can finally take root. God of the Sabbath, you who rested on the seventh day, not from exhaustion, but to establish a pattern for all creation, help me embrace the counterintuitive truth that rest produces strength. The muscle needs relaxation to grow. The mind needs silence to gain clarity. The heart needs stillness to beat in harmony with yours. I feel the resistance in my body as I try to slow down, the restlessness, the guilt, the fear of what I might discover in the quiet. Yet I know that continuing at this pace only distances me further from the peace you offer. Give me courage to defy the cultural current that equates worth with productivity. Divine timekeeper, as I deliberately slow my breathing now, I imagine each exhale releasing the pressure to perform, to achieve, to constantly prove my value. With each inhale, I welcome your presence that never rushes, never demands more than I can give, never measures my worth by my output. The clock on the wall may continue its relentless forward march, but my internal timepiece can operate at a different pace, the pace of grace, the rhythm of trust. In this moment of intentional slowing, I begin to feel spaces opening within me, spaces where your peace can finally enter and dwell. Compassionate God, with trembling hands and a vulnerable heart, I gather all my worries and anxieties to present them before you. Each concern feels like a heavy stone I've been carrying, some for days, others for years. There's the constant worry about my health and the health of those I love. The financial pressures that tighten around my chest when I try to sleep at night, the relationships that feel fragile and uncertain, the decisions that loom large on my horizon with no clear direction, the deep fear that I might be missing my purpose or failing in my responsibilities. These burdens have become so familiar that I sometimes forget they're not mine to carry. Father, I recognize now how tightly I've been gripping these concerns, as if holding them close somehow gives me control over their outcomes. My knuckles have turned white from the effort, and my spirit has grown weary from the weight. Today, I choose to open my clenched fists and release these worries into your capable hands. As your word promises in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, I can cast all my anxiety on you because you care for me. This is not a passive abandonment of responsibility, but an active trust in your sovereignty, a recognition that my constant worrying adds nothing to my life, but robs me of the peace you freely offer. Lord of the impossible, I surrender the outcomes I cannot control. I release my grip on the timeline of answers and solutions. I let go of my need to understand everything before I can trust. Each worry I place before you represents a declaration of faith. Faith that you see beyond my limited perspective, that your wisdom surpasses my understanding, that your love for me is more reliable than my efforts to secure my own well-being. As I name each concern specifically before you, I imagine physically lifting it from my shoulders and placing it at your feet, where it rightfully belongs. Divine burden bearer, I marvel at the immediate lightness I feel as I truly surrender these worries to you. The space they once occupied within me doesn't remain empty for long. Your peace begins to flow into these newly opened chambers of my heart. The muscles in my shoulders start to relax, my breathing deepens, and my mind clears like a sky after storm clouds have passed. This surrender isn't a one-time event, but a continuous choice I must make moment by moment. When I feel the instinctive urge to reclaim these worries, and I know I will, remind me of this sacred exchange, my burdens for your peace, my anxiety for your assurance, my fear for your faithful presence. Faithful God, your promises stand like ancient mountains in the landscape of my life, unmoved by the changing weather of my circumstances, unshaken by the earthquakes of my doubts. Today I turn my attention to these eternal words, letting them sink deeper than my temporary troubles. You have proclaimed in Isaiah chapter 26 verse 3 that you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. This isn't a conditional offer that depends on my perfect faith or flawless behavior. It is your commitment to me, secured not by my grip on you, but by your unrelenting hold on me. Lord of covenant and commitment, I recall your promise in John chapter 14, verse 27, where you said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Unlike the fragile peace the world offers, dependent on favorable circumstances or the absence of conflict, your peace transcends conditions. It flows from your unchanging character rather than my changing situation. When I forget this truth, when anxiety crowds out my confidence in your words, gently remind me that your promises aren't merely historical statements, but present realities I can step into today. Promise-keeping Father, I choose now to build my life on the solid foundation of your words, rather than the shifting sands of my feelings. When my emotions scream that I am alone, your promise whispers that you will never leave me nor forsake me, as you declared in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. When my mind races with worst-case scenarios, your promise reminds me that you work all things together for the good of those who love you, as stated in Romans chapter 8, verse 28. When my strength fails, your promise assures me that your power is made perfect in my weakness, as revealed in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. God of unwavering fidelity, as I meditate on these promises, I feel them taking root in the soil of my consciousness, pushing aside the weeds of worry and doubt. I recognize how often I've traded the solid comfort of your word for the hollow reassurances of my own reasoning. Today, I reclaim these promises not as distant hopes for a better tomorrow, but as present realities I can inhabit now. I choose to dwell in them like rooms in a secure house, to breathe them in like fresh air, to wear them like a protective garment. They are not merely concepts to understand, but truths to experience. Doorways into the peace that transcends understanding, as promised in Philippians chapter 4, verse 7. Creator God, when I pause to truly observe the world you've made, I find your peace reflected everywhere. The mighty oak outside my window doesn't strive or stress about growing. It simply extends its roots down and its branches up, receiving what you provide in each season. The birds don't hoard or worry about tomorrow's provisions, yet they sing with abandon, their melody a testament to your faithful care. As Jesus reminded us in Matthew chapter 6, verses 26 to 28, if you care so attentively for these creations, how much more do you watch over me? When I align my heart with this natural order, my anxieties begin to dissolve in the face of such evident providence. Master artist, in the rhythms of nature, I discover the pulse of a deeper peace. The ocean's tide follows its appointed times without resistance or complaint. The seasons transition in their perfect sequence, each fulfilling its purpose before yielding to the next. The rain falls on fields without discriminating between the crops of the faithful and the doubting. This ordered dance continues regardless of human turmoil or triumph, reminding me that behind the apparent chaos of life exists a divine harmony that never falters. When I forget your sovereignty, the mountains stand as monuments to your unchanging strength, the stars as witnesses to your magnificent attention to detail. Lord of all creation, today I choose to see your fingerprints in the world around me. The delicate structure of a snowflake speaks of your intricate care. The vast expanse of the night sky declares your limitless power. The persistent green shoot pushing through concrete testifies to the resilient life you place within all things. As Psalm chapter 19 verse 1 proclaims, "The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands." These aren't merely poetic metaphors, but living parables you've embedded in creation to teach me about your character and call me back to trust when fear threatens to overwhelm my heart. Divine Gardener, as I contemplate the lilies that neither toil nor spin yet outshine Solomon's glory, I recognize how much energy I waste on anxiety instead of wonder. The natural world doesn't worry about fulfilling its purpose. Each element simply abides in the design you established, becoming beautiful through simply being what you created it to be. Today I choose to learn from this wordless wisdom. I allow the rhythm of my breathing to sync with the peaceful cadence of your creation. I feel the solid ground beneath me as a reminder of your unwavering support. The gentle breeze against my skin becomes your whispered assurance that though I cannot see you, your presence surrounds me constantly, sustaining every moment of my existence with intentional love. Generous God, I come before you now with a heart deliberately turning toward gratitude. Like the sun gradually warming cold ground, I feel thanksgiving beginning to thaw the frozen places within me where worry has taken hold. I start with the simplest acknowledgements. Thank you for the gift of breath filling my lungs, for the blood coursing through my veins, for the intricate network of nerves and muscles that allow me to move through this world. Thank you for the senses that connect me to your creation, for eyes that witness beauty, ears that receive music, taste buds that experience pleasure, skin that feels the comfort of a gentle touch, and a nose that delights in sweet fragrances. Before I ask for anything more, I pause to recognize the miracle that I exist at all. Father of every good gift, I extend my gratitude beyond my physical being to the relationships that sustain me. Thank you for the people you've placed in my life who reflect your love when my faith grows dim. For friends who listen without judgment, for family who know my flaws yet choose to see my potential, for mentors who guide my steps with wisdom drawn from their own journeys. I'm grateful for communities where I belong, for conversations that spark growth, for laughter that heals wounded places, and for the silent understanding that passes between kindred spirits. As Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 to 10 reminds us, two are better than one, for they have good return for their labor and can help each other up when they fall. Abundant provider, my thankfulness expands to acknowledge your material provisions that I so often take for granted. Thank you for shelter that protects me from harsh elements, for clean water that quenches my thirst, for food that nourishes my body, for clothing that offers warmth and dignity. I'm grateful for work that engages my mind and hands, for resources that meet my needs and allow me to share with others, for medical care when illness strikes, for technology that connects me across distances, and for systems of transportation that expand my world. When I view these not as entitlements but as gifts, my perspective shifts from scarcity to abundance, from fear to confidence in your continuing care. God of transformation, as I practice this intentional gratitude, I notice something changing within me. The tight knot of anxiety in my chest begins to loosen. My breathing deepens. My thoughts slow their frantic pace. This is the miracle of thanksgiving. Not that it changes my circumstances, but that it changes me within those circumstances. As Paul instructs in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 18, to give thanks in all circumstances, I discover this isn't merely religious discipline, but spiritual medicine. Gratitude doesn't deny difficulty, but it refuses to let difficulty become my entire story. It carves out space for your peace to enter, reminding me that even in hardship I am not abandoned, even in uncertainty I am not without blessings to count. Even in grief, I'm not without reasons to thank you for what remains and what awaits. Holy God, in this moment I choose to enter the sanctuary of silence, letting the constant noise of the world fade until all that remains is the awareness of your presence. The clamor of opinions, the barrage of information, the demands for my attention, I release them all and sink into this sacred quiet. As Elijah discovered on the mountain in 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 11 to 13, you were not in the earthquake, wind or fire, but in the gentle whisper that followed. So often I've searched for you in dramatic manifestations, missing your voice in the stillness. Today I quiet my soul like a weaned child with its mother, as the psalmist describes in Psalm chapter 131 verse 2, content simply to be in your presence without demanding anything. Father of wisdom, in this intentional silence, I begin to distinguish between the many voices competing for authority in my life. There's my own voice of self-criticism and doubt. There are voices from my past, some that wound and some that encourage. There are cultural voices prescribing what success and happiness should look like. There are anxious voices forecasting disaster and failure. But beneath them all, when I truly listen, I hear your voice, consistent, loving, truthful, and life-giving. This voice doesn't shout to be heard, but waits to be sought. It speaks not to my fear, but to my true identity as your beloved child. Divine Counselor, as I continue in this quiet space, I notice how my racing thoughts begin to settle like dust after a storm. Clarity emerges from confusion. Perspective replaces panic. The matters that seemed so urgent just moments ago find their proper place in the larger landscape of life. I recognize now how my constant mental chatter has been drowning out your guidance. The solutions I've been desperately seeking, the comfort I've been longing for, the direction I've been requesting, these haven't been absent, but simply inaudible amidst the noise I've allowed to fill every corner of my consciousness. In this silence, I finally hear what you've been speaking all along. God of peace, I discover in this stillness that you have never been distant. I have simply been distracted. You've been present in every moment, closer than my breath, more immediate than my next thought. As Augustine observed, you have been more intimate to me than I am to myself. This silence isn't empty, but pregnant with possibility, not vacant, but vibrant with your existence. I choose now to make this practice of sacred silence a regular rhythm in my life, a deliberate clearing of space where I can hear your whispered wisdom. I will no longer give every moment to activity and noise, but will set aside time to simply be still and know that you are God, as you instruct in Psalm chapter 46 verse 10. Compassionate healer, I bring before you the wounded places in my heart that prevent me from experiencing your perfect peace. Some of these injuries are fresh and throbbing with recent pain, harsh words spoken, trust betrayed, hopes dashed against the rocks of reality. Others are older wounds that have hardened into scars, less painful to the touch but still limiting my capacity for joy and intimacy. There are rejections that taught me to hide my true self, disappointments that convinced me not to hope too much, failures that whispered I would never be enough. These emotional injuries have become barriers to the peace you offer, fortresses built not for protection, but for imprisonment. Divine Physician, with trembling vulnerability, I expose these tender places to your healing light. I name the specific hurts I've carried, the childhood message that I wasn't enough, the betrayal by someone I trusted completely, the loss that left a gaping hole in my life, the mistake I made that seems unforgivable, the dream that died before it could be realized. Each of these wounds has altered how I see myself, others, and even you. They've taught me to expect pain rather than peace, to anticipate rejection rather than acceptance, to prepare for abandonment rather than faithful presence. As Isaiah prophesied in Isaiah chapter 61 verses 1 to 3, you came to bind up the brokenhearted and provide for those who grieve, giving a crown of beauty instead of ashes. Gentle restorer, I recognize how these unhealed hurts have influenced my behavior in ways that perpetuate my pain. I've built walls to prevent further injury, only to find myself isolated from love. I've developed hypervigilance that robs me of present joy by constantly scanning for future threats. I've projected past betrayals onto current relationships, poisoning them with suspicion. I've allowed old messages about my worth to limit what I believe is possible in my life. These defensive patterns once served a purpose but now only distance me from the peace you offer. Today, I surrender these protective mechanisms, choosing to trust your healing process even when it requires revisiting painful places. God of all comfort, as promised in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verses 3 to 4, you comfort us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others with the comfort we receive from you. I accept your healing touch now, imagining your light penetrating each dark and wounded space, your love dissolving decades of pain, your truth replacing lies I've believed about myself. This restoration isn't instantaneous, but a gradual process of returning to wholeness. Some wounds may leave scars that tell the story of where I've been, but they no longer need to determine where I'm going. I receive your peace into these tender places, allowing it to flow precisely where pain has reigned, transforming my wounds into well springs of compassion for others who suffer as I have. Sovereign Lord, I recognize now how my resistance to your timing has been a source of inner conflict. I've pushed against the natural seasons of my life, fighting the ebbs and flows you designed for my growth. I've demanded harvest during planting time and resisted pruning when it was necessary for future abundance. This misalignment has created a profound disharmony within me, like an instrument playing out of time with the orchestra. Today, I surrender my timeline to yours, acknowledging that Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 8, speaks truth when it declares there is a season for everything under heaven. Master Conductor, help me discern the rhythm you've established for my life in this particular season, when I should advance and when I should wait, when I should speak and when silence is wisdom, when I should work diligently and when rest is the most productive choice. The world around me beats to a frantic tempo that ignores natural limits and sacred pauses. I've allowed this cultural cadence to override the more sustainable pace you set for human flourishing. I choose now to step out of that rushed current and attune my heart to your measured rhythm, trusting that everything unfolds in its appointed time. God of perfect timing, I release my need to control the pace of my growth, healing, and achievements. I acknowledge that some fruit can't be forced, but must be allowed to ripen naturally. Some answers aren't delayed, but are being carefully prepared. Some journeys can't be rushed without missing essential lessons along the way. As the prophet Isaiah reminds us in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 15, in quietness and trust is your strength. This isn't passive resignation, but active alignment with your perfect wisdom. I choose to trust that your timing is motivated by love, informed by complete knowledge, and always oriented toward my ultimate good. Divine Timekeeper, as I align myself with your rhythm, I feel a new kind of freedom emerging. The pressure to make everything happen now begins to dissolve. The anxiety about missed opportunities fades as I trust your sovereignty over my path. The comparison with others' progress loses its power as I embrace my unique timeline. I release the heavy burden of trying to force outcomes that only you can orchestrate. In this surrender to your rhythm, I discover the peace that comes from working with, rather than against the flow of your divine purpose. My breath deepens, my shoulders relax, and my spirit finds rest in the knowledge that your timing is perfect, even when it doesn't match my preferences. God of ordinary moments, open my eyes to recognize your presence in the mundane patterns of my daily existence, in the steam rising from my morning coffee, in the familiar voices of my family, in the routine tasks that fill my hours. I've been looking for you in dramatic revelations while you've been waiting to be discovered in plain sight. The Apostle Paul reminded us in Acts chapter 17, verses 27 to 28, that you are not far from any one of us, for in you we live and move and have our being. This means every inhale is filled with your presence, every heartbeat echoes your sustaining power, every moment is infused with sacred potential. Father who notices sparrows and counts hares, teach me to practice what Brother Lawrence called the sacrament of the present moment, finding you not despite my circumstances but within them. When I wash dishes, let me be mindful of your cleansing grace. When I prepare food, let me remember your provision. When I commute to work, let me recognize the journey as a pilgrimage in your presence. When I interact with colleagues, let me see your image reflected in each face. These aren't poetic metaphors, but spiritual realities that transform ordinary routines into encounters with the divine when approached with awareness and gratitude. Present one, I confess how frequently I miss you in my preoccupation with past regrets or future anxieties. My mind wanders from what is before me, always reaching for what isn't here. Yet you are always in the now, fully present in each unfolding moment. Jesus modeled this presence when he gave undivided attention to each person he encountered, whether a respected rabbi or a scorned woman at a well. As described in John chapter 4, verses 7 to 30, he demonstrated how sacred connection happens in ordinary exchanges when approached with mindful presence. Today, I choose to anchor myself in this present moment where you are always waiting to be found. Spirit of peace, as I practice this sacred awareness, I notice how anxiety recedes. When I'm fully present, worries about tomorrow lose their grip. When I engage completely with what's before me, rather than splitting my attention between multiple concerns, I experience the peace that comes from wholeness rather than fragmentation. I discover that joy isn't found in extraordinary circumstances, but in ordinary moments approached with extraordinary attention. The simple pleasure of a shared meal, the gentle grace of twilight, the comforting rhythm of familiar conversation, these become doorways to your presence when I give them my full attention rather than rushing through them toward some imagined better future. Gracious God, I come before you acknowledging the exhausting burden of perfectionism I've been carrying. The relentless internal demands to get everything right, to never disappoint, to maintain impossibly high standards in all areas of life. This perfectionism isn't the healthy pursuit of excellence. You encourage but a fear-driven performance that leaves no room for grace or growth. It keeps me trapped in cycles of anxious striving, harsh self-judgment, and the constant feeling that I'm never quite enough. Today, I bring this burden to you, ready to exchange it for the freedom you promise, in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30, where you invite all who are weary to find rest in your gentle yoke. Loving Father, help me differentiate between the voice of perfectionism and your voice of truth. Perfectionism speaks in absolutes and extremes, always and never, everything and nothing. It demands flawlessness when you only ask for faithfulness. It insists on immediate mastery when you value the process of growth. It amplifies mistakes while minimizing progress. Your voice, in contrast, is kind even when correcting, encouraging even when challenging, and always oriented toward my healing rather than my performance. Today, I choose to listen for your affirming voice above the harsh demands of perfectionism that have driven me toward exhaustion and robbed me of peace. God of unconditional love, the root of my perfectionism is the false belief that your acceptance of me is based on my performance rather than your grace. I've been trying to earn what you freely give. Romans chapter 5 verse 8 reminds me that you demonstrated your love while I was still a sinner, not after I cleaned up my act or achieved some arbitrary standard of goodness. This truth is intellectually simple but emotionally revolutionary. It means I don't have to perform perfectly to be fully loved. It means my mistakes, limitations, and failures don't disqualify me from your affection. It means I can stop exhausting myself trying to prove my worth and instead rest in the worth you've already assigned to me. Divine Craftsman, help me embrace the beautiful reality that I am and always will be a work in progress. The Apostle Paul expressed confidence in Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. This means my incompleteness isn't a flaw but an inherent part of the human journey. My mistakes aren't failures, but opportunities for growth. My limitations aren't defects, but invitations to rely on your strength rather than my own. As I release the need to have everything perfect right now, I find space to breathe, to explore, to risk, and to grow. In this liberation from perfectionism, I discover a peace that performance could never provide. Unchanging God, when everything around me seems unstable and shifting, I turn to anchor myself in the bedrock certainty of your eternal love. Unlike human affection that can waver with moods or circumstances, your love remains constant, unearned, undeserved, yet absolutely unshakable. The prophet Jeremiah captured this beautifully in Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 3, when you declared, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. This isn't temporary emotion, but permanent covenant, not conditional approval, but fundamental commitment to my well-being regardless of my performance, appearance, or accomplishments. Father of compassion, I visualize your love as a vast ocean, not a puddle that can dry up in drought or freeze in cold seasons, but a limitless expanse that can absorb all my doubts, fears, and failures without diminishing in the slightest. When I wade into these waters of divine affection, bringing all my brokenness and struggle, I find they don't retreat from my mess, but instead cleanse and heal it. Romans chapter 8 verses 38 to 39 assures me that nothing, absolutely nothing, can separate me from this love. Not death or life, not angels or demons, not present anxieties or future uncertainties, not heights of success or depths of failure. Faithful lover of my soul, I choose now to rest in this love, not as a distant theological concept, but as the most practical reality of my existence. When anxiety suggests I face my challenges alone, your love reminds me of your constant presence. When shame whispers I am too flawed to approach you, your love invites me closer, just as I am. When grief threatens to drown me, your love becomes the solid ground beneath the flood. When confusion clouds my path, your love provides the certainty I can build my life upon. This isn't emotional escapism, but spiritual realism, acknowledging that your love is the most concrete and dependable reality in my universe. Eternal One, as I anchor myself in this unchanging love, I discover a peace that transcends my circumstances. The storms may still rage around me, but they no longer define me or determine my internal state. I can face uncertainty with confidence, knowing I am eternally held. I can navigate change without fear, knowing my primary identity as your beloved remains constant. I can release anxiety about the future, knowing the God who holds tomorrow already holds me in an embrace that will never loosen. This security becomes the foundation for a peace that doesn't deny life's challenges, but faces them from a position of being eternally, perfectly, and completely loved. God of truth, I recognize that much of my internal turmoil stems not from my circumstances, but from the distorted lenses through which I view them. My mind has absorbed messages that contradict your reality, lies about my worth, exaggerations of my problems, misinterpretations of your character, and false predictions about my future. These thought patterns have become so familiar, I mistake them for truth. Today, I surrender my thinking to the transforming power of your word, as instructed in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. I acknowledge that peace begins not with changed circumstances, but with a renewed perspective. Divine Teacher, help me identify the specific thought patterns that sabotage my peace, the catastrophic thinking that always assumes the worst possible outcome, the personalization that takes everything as a reflection on my worth, the black and white perspective that misses the nuanced grace in complex situations, the mind reading that assumes negative judgments from others, the emotional reasoning that confuses feelings with facts. These mental habits have created well-worn neural pathways that lead consistently away from peace. With your help, I commit to challenging these patterns and replacing them with thoughts aligned with your truth, as directed in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Word made flesh, your truth is not abstract philosophy, but living reality that counters the specific lies plaguing my mind. When I believe I'm worthless, your truth declares I am fearfully and wonderfully made, as proclaimed in Psalm chapter 139, verse 14. When I feel abandoned, your truth promises you will never leave me, as assured in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. When I'm convinced my mistakes define me, your truth affirms I am a new creation, as stated in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. When anxiety suggests catastrophe, your truth reminds me you work all things for good, as promised in Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Each scripture becomes a sword to cut through deception and a light illuminating a path back to peace. Spirit of wisdom, I commit to the disciplined practice of taking every thought captive, as instructed in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. This isn't passive acceptance of whatever crosses my mind, but active engagement with my thought life. When anxious predictions arise, I will test them against your promises. When self-condemnation speaks, I will answer with your grace. When division threatens, I will remember your call to unity. When bitterness volunteers its perspective, I will choose the viewpoint of forgiveness. This transformation doesn't happen instantly, but through consistent practice, like learning a new language or developing a muscle. As my mind aligns more completely with your truth, I discover that peace isn't just an emotional state, but the natural result of thinking in harmony with reality as you define it. Prince of Peace, in this sacred moment I quiet all other voices to focus solely on communion with you, not to ask for anything, not to solve problems, not even to seek understanding, but simply to be with you, the original and eternal source of all peace. Isaiah prophesied your name in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, recognizing that true peace isn't a technique to be mastered, but a person to be encountered. I open myself now to this encounter, to the mysterious reality that the creator of countless galaxies desires intimate connection with me. In your presence, the peace I've been striving to manufacture comes naturally, like warmth near a fire or light in the presence of the sun. Holy friend, I approach you not with formal religious language, but with the authentic expression of my heart, believing you desire real relationship over ritual. I imagine sitting beside you, like John did at the Last Supper, close enough to hear your heartbeat, to feel the rhythm of divine love pulsing through the universe. I bring nothing to impress you, no spiritual achievements to display, no religious performance to earn your approval. I come simply as I am, sometimes confused, often inconsistent, occasionally doubtful, frequently distracted, yet genuinely seeking your face. In this unguarded authenticity, I discover the peace that comes from being fully known, yet fully loved. Intimate God, as I remain in this quiet communion, I become aware of your peace transferring to me like heat, passing between objects in close proximity. This isn't peace I create through effort, but peace I receive through proximity, the natural result of dwelling in your presence. Jesus promised this divine exchange in John chapter 14, verse 27, offering not the temporary peace the world gives, but his own eternal peace that transcends understanding. I notice how different this feels from the counterfeit peace I've often pursued, the false relief of numbing activities, the temporary calm of controlling circumstances, the illusory security of human approval. Your peace has substance and durability that these imitations lack. Abiding presence. As I prepare to return to my daily activities, I hold fast to the truth that this communion doesn't end when my formal prayer time concludes. You remain with me always, as promised in Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. The peace established in these moments of focused connection can continue as I carry your presence into every situation. Like Moses, whose face reflected glory after time on the mountain, I go forward bearing the evidence of having been with you. Your peace becomes portable, not confined to quiet rooms or religious buildings, but available in busy offices, crowded streets, and challenging conversations. The secret is not better time management or stress reduction techniques, but maintaining conscious connection with you, the ever-present source of all true peace. Generous God, as you filled me with your peace, I recognize this gift wasn't meant to terminate with me, but to flow through me to a world in desperate need of tranquility. Jesus called his followers to be peacemakers in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, not just peace receivers or peacekeepers. This means actively participating in your reconciling work rather than merely enjoying private serenity. Help me see opportunities to create spaces of peace in my relationships, to speak words that heal rather than wound, to listen in ways that validate rather than dismiss, and to choose responses that de-escalate rather than intensify conflict. Let me be a conduit of your calming presence in every interaction. Divine Reconciler, I ask for wisdom to be an instrument of your peace in specific situations I face. In family tensions, help me prioritize relationship over being right. In workplace conflicts, give me courage to speak truth with gentleness and respect. In community divisions, show me how to build bridges rather than reinforce walls. In the face of hostility, strengthen me to respond with unexpected kindness rather than matching hostility with hostility. As Paul instructs in Romans chapter 12, verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. I recognize that while I cannot control others' responses, I am responsible for bringing your peaceful presence into every situation I enter. Spirit of unity, help me understand that radiating peace doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations or suppressing authentic emotions. Jesus himself confronted injustice and expressed righteous anger. True peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of right relationship with you, with others, and within myself. Sometimes creating genuine peace requires the courage to address problems rather than pretend they don't exist. Guide me to know when to speak and when to remain silent, when to confront and when to overlook, when to stand firm and when to yield. In all cases, help me act from a center of peace rather than reactivity, ensuring that my methods align with the peaceful future I hope to create. Light of the world, as I conclude this prayer, I visualize your peace radiating from me in expanding circles, first to those closest to me, then to my community, and ultimately contributing to the healing of our divided world. I imagine your peace as a gentle but persistent force, like water that eventually shapes even the hardest stone. I recommit myself to being a living witness that another way is possible beyond the conflict, divisiveness, and anxiety that characterize so much of modern life. As I walk forward from this moment of prayer, I carry your peace not as a fragile treasure to be protected, but as an abundant resource to be generously shared, trusting that in giving peace away, I will find my own supply constantly replenished from your infinite source. In the name of the Prince of Peace, who taught us to love not only our neighbors, but also our enemies, I pray. Amen.